Intraspatial, energy lattices, conductors of energy in space. Intraspatial, energy lattices, an expression that combines both intragalactic and intra-universal energy lattices that receive and transmit the energy of charges in space. If we don't understand something, we don't hear it, let alone see it. It doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. The apparent spatial emptiness is not such. Intragalactic and intra-universal conductors, which are sources of propagation of light and heat, are hidden behind the transparency of space. To make it clear, in our material world, there are two worlds at the same time, one big world that exists around us. We know this world, and we're already used to it. Also, there is another, micro-world, which lives its own life, in parallel with our big world. In this micro-world there is a spatial structured energy lattice that occupies everything in the space of this micro-world. It has always existed in this micro-world. For our large material world, this microstructured energy lattice is so microscopic, and if you don't go deep into the small, you can even say that this invisible energy lattices in the space of our big world does not exist, and never has been. Those who live inside the large material world do not see this transparent energy lattice at all, because of its microscopic dimensions. Therefore, none of those living in the big world react to it, because it does not exist for them. You can talk about the speed of light, and about its limits, come up with laws about light photons flying in space at the speed of light. In fact, it can turn out that the main sources of light and heat transmission in space can be not photons flying at a speed of 300,000 kilometers per second, but microparticles, as sources of initial charges, carrying any energy, including light. Including those who can transfer their light charges through intraspatial energy lattices, closely contacting them, and this is a completely different story. Light and heat energies, as well as all information transmitted in space, is transmitted precisely through intraspatial energy lattices. There will be no these energy grids, there will be no transmission of light and other types of energies, just as there will be no radio, television, and other energy connections in space. In this publication, I will try to convince many of this. Radio waves just flying in space. A strange, completely incomprehensible idea of how energy is actually transferred, as well as another connection in space, gives rise to fictions about radio waves flying in space, without any explanation. In these inventions, the radio waves of Earthlings simply fly in space and that's it. From the presented pictures, one can understand that Earthlings do not have an unambiguous answer on how radio waves really fly in space. Radio waves are electromagnetic oscillations that propagate through space at the speed of light of 300,000 km per second. And everything, further, you can think in this direction about anything, as far as your imagination will suffice. Distribution of light in space. the prevailing opinion about flying light particles, photons, as the only carriers of solar energy in space, flying at the magical speed of light of 300,000 kilometers per second, does not allow Earthlings to see another, alternative, already existing possibility of transmitting light and thermal energy in space. And here among Earthlings, photons too, like radio waves, simply fly in space. The simplest explanation, well, what else can photons do? Only fly. Of course, just like that, photons would not fly away along with radio waves driven by electromagnetic oscillations, even if they wanted to, and could disperse them to a speed of 300,000 kilometers per second. To understand how the propagation of light in space can really take place, for this, you must first understand the functioning of intraspatial, intra-universal and intragalactic conductors, energy lattices that connect everything in the galaxies and in the universe. To do this, you will have to get acquainted with this, my not quite ordinary publication, and with other publications that will expand the boundaries of your consciousness, open up the possibilities of your mind, for something more, perhaps for a real understanding of ours, and at the same time, already another world. And only after that, perhaps, it will become clear how the connection between black and light cosmic holes is carried out, pulling up the spatial component of space with their powerful force magnetic fields during interdimensional field connection. The empty airy, transparent space that exists between the objects of the material world is not perceived in detail by our eyes, it is skipped as something not important. Our vision is rather aimed at objects that exist in the material world, although the spatial void can be filled with invisible, small elementary microparticles located in a certain order of their location in space. Everything, the internal spatial regions of the universe and galaxies, are constantly being formatted and stabilized by the action of their central nuclei, which create powerful force magnetic fields, which stabilize the existence of intraspatial and visible energy lattices located in the internal spaces of the universe and in galaxies. Cosmic bodies, stars and planets, located inside invisible energy lattices, are forced to constantly contact with them. Structure of intraspatial energy lattices. Our material, galactic world can be located inside a volumetric microstructured energy lattice, which has a cellular structure, the existence of which is formatted and stabilized by a powerful force magnetic field formed by the constantly rotating central core of the galaxy. The entire internal space of the galaxy can be filled with voluminous invisible, microstructured intraspatial energy lattices, consisting of interconnected cells. These cells receive and immediately transmit through these gratings different charges and signals of any received frequencies, moving at different speeds, including light. Any energy and information can be received into the cells of energy lattices, and immediately transmitted, both by a wide stream of transferred charges, and by a narrowly directed compressed energy light beam. Charges through the energy lattices can be transmitted sequentially, as well as in parallel, if the microparticles carrying the initial charges have a wide band of attack on the cells located in the intraspatial energy lattice. The energy lattice consists of energy squares, cells, in the corners of which there are neutral atoms, particles that receive and transmit charges, the energy of charged particles of moving electrons along communication lines, channels, along which electrons can move to atoms, charging them up to a certain level. After being saturated, a charged atom saturated with electrons turns into a luminous ion. Further, the ion, overflowing with charged electrons, transfers its excess energy through the communication lines, in the form of moving electrons, to another neutral atom located nearby, in the next cell, and so on, moving along these intraspatial energy lattices in any direction. The transfer of charges, when moving in a straight line, can be carried out until the energy of the transferred charges is completely weakened. Any cell of energy lattices is universal, and is ready to receive energy and any signals of various frequencies, wherever this cell is located in the space of the galaxy, or in the universe, and at whatever speeds, this energy and signals are transmitted. The cells are always ready to receive and instantly transmit the received energy, or signals in space. The work of these energy cells is organized in such a way that the charge received by neutral particles from external microparticles carrying their initial charges, getting into the cells of the energy lattices, charging, saturating, the neutral particles of these cells, would be instantly transmitted along the chain, through these cells to other, exactly the same cells, charging other neutral atoms located in other cells, and so on. Everything is simple. And everything works for billions of years. Initial charges. The energy lattice can receive powerful, unspent energy, initial charges coming directly from the solar corona. The speed of the charges transmitted through the energy lattices occurs instantly, and many times exceeds the speed of simply flying photons, which waste their energy during a normal flight through space. This is the main advantage of energy lattices, in the instantaneous transfer of energy, over a simple span. A simple flight in space is forced to make large physical bodies, as well as spacecraft. This limits the speed of their flight. The advantage of microparticles is that they can transfer their energy, their clone charges through intradimensional energy lattices, while increasing their speed. The movement of the transferred charges along the intraspatial energy lattices can be directed to any direction of the volumetric space. The movement of charges is directed from the source of the initial charges. The sources of initial charges can be various sources of radiating energy, such as the sun, a light bulb, or other sources. The round shapes of the emitter of initial charges direct the initial charges along their entire circular perimeter. The sun is inside the energy lattice, just like the light bulb, they are already ready for contact with the energy lattice. the Sun constantly sends its initial charges into the energy lattice, and the light bulb sends its charges immediately after it is turned on. In terms of impact on the energy lattice, this is not important. Only in comparison with the Sun transfers powerful initial charges containing not only light energy, but also energy accompanied by a large release of heat, the thermal energy of charges, when these charges move along the intraspatial energy lattices. The cells of the intragalactic and intra-universal energy lattices repeat the received initial charges, transfer these received charges, making, of them, exact energy copies, clones of charges that can be transmitted, along the intraspatial energy lattices, in different directions, with given parameters, and even, with the possibility of cycling, the movements of the transferred charges rotating in a circle, driven by centrifugal force. In this case, the light speed of charge transfer can be increased many times. From the looped, circular rotation of charges in space, a lot will depend on what will happen in the future, about which it is too early to talk, so that the unreasonable do not harm the whole world, and themselves. Formed from the rotation of the central core of the universe and the central nuclei of the galaxies, magnetic fields stabilize the existence of invisible intraspatial energy lattices, which completely fill all the internal spaces of the universe and galaxies. Without the constant action of the force magnetic field of the galaxy, the entire intraspatial microstructured lattice could not exist, it would crumble. Therefore, it is important that the rotation of the central nuclei of the galaxies never stop, even for a second. Therefore, these rotating central nuclei, in order to stabilize the rotation system, work synchronously with other nuclei rotating in parallel, forming in the center of the galaxies the cumulative rotation of several nuclei, outwardly resembling a jumper. The energy jumpers that exist in the center of the galaxies may indicate the existence on the planets, in some solar systems of these galaxies, of a more complicated, perhaps already intelligent life. Mystery. There has always been a big mystery for Earthlings, and it is still in front of their eyes. There is another, intraspatial lattice, energy, which consists of correctly arranged elements. It has transparency, flexibility, has fragile atomic ionic compounds of its own, basic elements, with the possibility of their restoration in the cells. The intraspatial energy lattice has the ability to restore its structures under the influence of a force magnetic field, which stabilizes the existence of this intragalactic energy lattice. Everything is organized this way and built to be simple and work for billions of years. How I have names: intraspatial energy lattices. Intra-universal and intragalactic spaces are voluminous, therefore, they can be filled with something voluminous, in this case, energy lattices. This is a more accurate definition of what is, and what can be filled with the internal spaces of the universe, and galaxies. This is so same, and what can surround, and are, the material world. Not a grid gravitating towards something flat, namely energy lattices. The name, energy lattices, I called it so because the main control element of these energy lattices is the energy of charges that act on the microparticles located in the cells of these energy lattices. From the series parallel connection of these cells, all intraspatial energy lattices are formed. Speed of transfer of different charges across interspecies energy lattices. You can talk about the speed of light, about its limits, come up with and rejoice at laws about light photons flying in space at the speed of light. In fact, it can turn out that neither these light photons are real sources of light propagation and heat in space, because the initial light charges emanating from a source, for example, from the Sun, can be instantly transferred along the intraspatial energy lattices, closely contacting them, illuminating, with the transferred charges carrying light and heat, in space, along their route, bringing that cloned light and warmth to its final destination. The concept of the speed of light, rooted in the minds of people, in fact, microparticles carrying light and charged with light or other energy, can contact the intragalactic and intra-universal energy lattices, which fill the entire internal space of the galaxies in the universe, and simply transfer their charges through them. Therefore, it is necessary to speak not about the existence, the very speed of light as such, but about the speed, the transfer of various charges and light, including, through intra-universal and intragalactic lattices, or in other words, through intraspatial energy lattices. This is one and also the influence of everything material, on the intraspatial energy lattices. A person running on the ground, through space, does not see and does not perceive his being inside a voluminous space filled with a microstructured energy lattice. He sees only an empty, transparent space. Living beings living on the planet are constantly inside the energy voluminous, microstructured matrix field filled with these microparticles. Not noticing their existence, they are forced to constantly overcome them, scattering these micro-connections in space as they move through it. The action of the force magnetic field, constantly, restores the structure of the intraspatial energy lattice. So a person, overcoming empty space, will not even notice that he has scattered some micro-connections of the existing, invisible energy magnetic lattice. After its passage through space, the microelements that have changed their location and are in the cells of the intraspatial energy lattice, due to the constant action of the force magnetic field, will be restored again, and will take their places in space, where they should be. Large material physical bodies, plowing the expanses of outer space, flying through intraspatial energy lattices, also scatter micro-connections with their bodies, breaking the energy frame of these invisible energy lattices, at the place of their flight, through space. The work of the central nuclei of the galaxies and the central nucleus of the universe, which create the powerful force magnetic fields, format and constantly restore the cellular structure of these intraspatial energy lattices, and after the passage, the cosmic material body, which scattered the invisible microelements that were in the cells of this invisible lattice, are restored, and again, occupy the same places in space, with the next constant formatting of the internal space. From the author. It is surprising that during the formation of the planet, and later, when dinosaurs ran around the planet, looking for someone to devour, even then, the planet was ready for technical development, because, initially, intraspatial energy lattices existed. This suggests that everything depends on the conditions for the possibility of developing a civilization located on the planet, and the desire of this civilization to move forward, acquiring morality, increasing its energy abilities, using the mind, for the possibility of obtaining a direct connection with the higher mind. A mystery that have been waiting for 200,000 years. From the present to the future, you need to send something reasonable and useful for others, so that life does not pass in vain. They will understand there, in the future. I think that in the future they will understand correctly this publication of mine about energy lattices hiding behind the transparency of space. This secret has been waiting for a long time, and the time has already come for it to be dealt with in detail. Anatoly Semenov-Gook, July 3, 2023.